Hello everybody, and welcome back to Poképaint, the series where I draw Fakemon to inhabit my fan-made Pokemon region based on Florida, the Gladios region. I know, it's been a long time since I've made the last video in this series. At this point, I think it's actually been over a month. But that's honestly because when developing the ideas for this video, I ran into a bit of artist's block. And honestly, it took weeks for me to finally nail down the final 2 designs out of the 3 that you're going to see today. Compounding that, I also was spending a lot of time filming the next season of DIY Prop Culture Builds, which if you've been following the community page, you know that you should be getting that in the next month or so. It ended up being way more time consuming than I wanted, but I'm putting a lot of effort into it and I'm really excited with the results so far, so that's okay with me. And all that on top of preparing to travel. Yeah, it's been a busy few weeks. Yeah, I didn't know if I would actually finish this video on time, and, well, honestly, I still don't. Hopefully you're all seeing this around the 31st, as I am making this video a week early so that you all have something while I am away. In fact, if you did get it on time, I will be in my last day in Florida at the time of making this, so you can almost say that this trip is a little bit of field research for the Gladios region. If you want to count a family trip to Disney World as a field research trip. Which, I wonder if I can write this off on my taxes. Anyway, a long opening tangent that's basically an excuse to say that my upload schedule has been drier than the Sahara Desert aside. Today, I will be taking a step back from designing the gyms and gym leaders, as by my estimations, I should be about halfway through this season, and as such, I should probably start tackling a few more important Pokemon. And since I want to hold off for my pseudo-legendary just a little bit longer, I decided I should design some mythical Pokemon, especially since I didn't draw any for Trapor, and I kinda regret that. Now, the difference between legendary and mythical Pokemon are an important distinction, as there's not actually an official definition differentiating the two groups. The most widely accepted difference is that legendaries and mythicals are both unobtainable in the wild by natural means, and whereas legendaries are usually encountered during the story and tied to the main themes of the game, the mythicals are usually encountered as part of a special event. Of course, that's not the only rule. That main rule isn't even really a good rule, as it doesn't even apply to like half of the mythicals in existence, including mine. But the main thing is that these will be a powerful set of very rare Pokemon in Gladios that is not tied to the story of this series. Instead, they will be part of a post-game weather event, similar to the Wandering Trio from Gold and Silver, or the Guardians of Justice from Black and White. Now, when I came up with this idea for a set of mythical Pokemon, I wanted to stray away from the tough, beastly kind, as my legendary trio would probably fall into that general range, and I wanted these sets of Pokemon to be able to contrast with each other, as they'll have some comparative qualities as well. I envisioned this trio as similar to Jirachi and the Lake Guardians as it comes to their body plans. But besides for nailing the look down, the theme that would be represented in this trio would be important as well. Sets of mythical Pokemon having a theme that ties them together is a staple throughout all of the designs in the main series. Great examples are the Lake Trio, representing parts of humanity and emotion, knowledge, and willpower, the Swords of Justice being references to the Three Musketeers, and the Regirocks being based on types of minerals and crystals in steel, rock, and ice, which in its solid form is a crystal. For my trio, I thought of doing a theme that fits with some of the others mentioned, but that surprisingly hasn't happened yet. This being a trio that represents the states of matter, in solids, liquids, and gases. Honestly, I'm pretty surprised something like this hasn't been done yet, especially since weather has been done 3 times, and that, as it turns out, would be a concept with a lot of crossover. You'll see in a bit. Starting off with the one that represents solids, we have Cryuno. With my naming convention, I wanted to reference the original mythical trio of Zapdos, Moltres, and Articuno. Although there's a lot of people that say that they're legendaries, and I think they're technically right. I usually think of them as mythicals, as I feel that they tick more of those boxes. But anyway, Cryuno would have uno, the Spanish word for one, as it is the lowest state of matter, energy-wise. When it came to designing this mon, I had already done some of the work on the others, so I had a good idea of the visual conventions that I wanted to use to tie the trio together. The best way to describe it in my head is that I almost imagined them as those little ghosts that you would get on Halloween, where somebody would tie a paper towel around a lollipop to make it look like a ghost. That's sort of the general body plan I went for. And although the others would be floaty and have the ability to fly around, I wanted Cryuno to be bound to walk on the ground, again referencing that it is the lowest energy state of matter. All of these mons would have head adornments of some sort, and I decided that Cryuno's would resemble a snowflake. Although the states of matter can be applied to basically every element and many combinations of elements, the most recognizable symbols related to the states of matter are the symbols related to the different states of water. And so each of these three would end up having some traits that tie into those symbols. I also decided that Cryuno's head adornment would also act sort of like a fluffy hood, like you would see on fur jackets. This sold the cold temperature idea even further. Each of the trio would also have a unique ability that relates to each other, and the effect that these matter state conditions have on the weather. See, I told you there's a little bit of crossover with that concept. Each of these abilities are named after transitions between states of matter. Cryuno's ability is named after desublimation, or a gas directly becoming a solid. And it would cause a hailstorm when it enters battle, as well as boosting its own stats when these elements are at play. In this specific scenario, the weather would not be able to be changed until Cryuno left battle, except of course if the other Pokemon in this trio switched out to override it. Cryuno, the solid state Pokemon. One member of a trio of Pokemon that are highly important to the native culture of Gladios. They were once thought to have been a harbinger of cold weather, though the legitimacy of that claim is contested by scientists. It remains a fact, however, that Cryuno is the least common of the trio, as Gladios' modern climate keeps it much higher than freezing temperatures, meaning that this Pokemon can only be found in the rare times that the region experiences snowfall in the absolute dead of winter, which only tends to happen in a small window of a few times once every dozen or so years. Some say that this Pokemon can also appear preceding hailstorm events, which is a much more common happenstance in the region. Hydrodos is the second member of the Matter Trio, and the first one that I designed. Unlike the others, I've had this specific design in my head for a few months now, so I was able to whip it up pretty quickly. The adornments on its head would resemble hydrogen in the H2O molecule symbol, as the H2O symbol is a very recognizable symbol for water in its liquid state of matter. There is also a blue circle around the features of the face that resembles an O, the O of oxygen, in that same symbol. Additionally, the highlights on the hydrogen parts could be construed as H's. Additionally, there's a water droplet on its chest, as if that other symbol for water wasn't obvious enough. It was here that I came up with the sheet/napkin ghost motif, and as well as looking like little spirits, they almost also looked like some sort of weird air jellyfish thing in the way that they have ribbon appendages that dangle down below their body. At least this one does. This would be another reference to the number thing that I have going on with the names. Whereas Cryuno had a singular ribbon in the front that sort of looked like a scarf, Hydros has two in reference to the dose part of its name, which is, of course, a combination of hydro referring to water and dose 2. Hydrodos' ability would be condensation, and that would activate permanent rain upon entry to battle, which would boost its stats as long as that weather effect remained active. Hydrodos, the liquid state Pokemon. Hydrodos are a rare species of Pokemon that have recently been discovered in the Gladios region, though legends of their existence dates back to ancient times. Legend says that they only appear in the minutes before or after massive rainstorms, which happen almost daily during certain seasons in the tropical regions like Gladios. It has been discovered that their body is composed of 99.9% liquid water, and as such they are most powerful at temperatures where water is naturally liquid. You might have noticed the size disparity between the previous two designs, which is an odd trait for these types of trios as they are usually all a similar size. Their size differences are in reference to how matter expands and contracts depending on the temperature that it's at. Cold solids are usually the most dense. Funnily enough, that rule doesn't apply to water, but that's besides the point. And gases are the least dense, and so this final form would be the largest by far. The final of the three is Evapores, and this was the last of the three that I finished, mostly because I had such a hard time finding the right look for it. Initially, I wanted to have some angelic imagery in there in reference to how water vapor forms clouds, and I was going to do this by having the hydrogen atoms of Hydrodos spin around its head and make a halo, but honestly, that just didn't look super great. So I went with a more direct approach and gave it a tuft of cloud on its head. Surprisingly, this is my favorite out of the 3 designs, which is weird since it took me so long to come up with the specific look. Which is weird since for so long I had no idea what this one was going to look like. But surprisingly, I think this version is the closest to my original concept for the 3 in my head. I feel super lucky that this version of this Pokemon actually even made it into this video, as I was super unlucky when I was making it. I was drawing this Pokemon on my break at work, and as soon as I made a design that I liked, which was after honestly weeks of working on it, my computer died halfway through the process, and I thought it in the recording would just be lost. But when I plugged it in at home, somehow Cryuno was still up and OBS was still recording, so that was some divine intervention there if I've ever seen any. Evapores' name comes from evaporate, when a liquid turns into a gas, and trace, which is 3 in Spanish. Its abilities, sublimate, references sublimation, which is when a solid turns directly into a gas. Evapores, the gaseous state Pokemon. Evapores is part of a trio of Pokemon that were once thought to only exist in the ancient tales passed down through the generations of Gladiosian families, though recently a few wild specimens have been catalogued. It is said that Evapores appear most often when the heat and humidity in the region peaks, making Evapores the most commonly sighted out of the trio by far. It is said that their bodies are made out of vaporous matter that can grow and shrink to fit in any room or container. So here is my mythical trio for the Gladios region, the Matter Trio, Cryuno, Hydrodos, and Evapores. Let me know what you think about them and if you would go out of your way to capture them in the comments below. I think the hypothetical game mechanic for capturing these mons might have something to do with the weather, where certain routes in the region may have a weather cycle, similar to the day-night cycle in the real games, and there would be a small chance, maybe in the post-game, that each of these Pokemon would show up as wandering Pokemon during their corresponding weather. I know that's not a normal concept for distributing mythical Pokemon, but hey, it's a way cooler idea than going to GameStop and buying their game data. Usually I'd go into a little bit about what I plan to do next for the series, but I'm going to leave it a mystery for now because I've got to get right into editing this before my flight leaves. Hopefully I get this done on time so that you're all seeing this before I get back. Only time will tell.
Great success.
So thank you all for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons STE, Alan Michael White, Vex, R.O. Bolt, and Griffin for your continued support. If you'd like to join them in their support, then you can follow the link in the description to my Patreon and get cool perks like early access to my videos for as little as $3 a month. I'm terrible about staying on schedule, so usually you'll get videos a day or 2 early, but in the case of the last 2 videos that I've made, this one and the recent Realistic 151 video, they've both been available on my Patreon for like a week since I made them early for my trip, so sometimes you do get really early access. But anyways, to those patrons again, thank you so much for your support. It truly means the world. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then leave a like, and if you want to see more like it, then subscribe, and turn on the bell to get notified when I upload next.